to be able to stand in front of God's people and share my testimony. Before I start, I just want to say it's not a testimony that evokes pity, which is something that I've observed that happens when I haven't shared it in a group like this before, but one-on-one, I see that happens. This is a testimony of God's faithfulness, really, because that's just what it is. I would like to start by reading just one verse in Job. I have a couple verses too that I'll read. It's in Job chapter 13 and in verse 15. Okay, so I'll just read it. Job 13:15, it says, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him, but I will maintain mine own ways before him." So this testimony, it really started in the year 2019. I had just come back from Scotland. I was a distinguished scholar, had my master's degree, lots of academic awards. I'd gotten a good job back in the city I live in Nigeria. I had gotten a full scholarship to write for a PhD at the University of Vermont. And then I had the love and admiration of a very beautiful woman. So life was beautiful in the first part of 2019. I had it all, quite literally. I literally had it all. And then it came to time for me to take my relationship with my partner to marriage level. And then after discussing with my family, I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. So the way it is in my culture, when we are going to get married, you go back to the city from where you're from. So you're from where your parents are from, not really from where you're born. And I was living in the north central part of Nigeria, which is not really among my people. And so because of that, we had to travel by road over 12 hours down to where we're from, my wife-to-be and I. And then we got wedded. I had some of my family with me. My parents, both of them were there. My brothers, particularly my younger brother, who was like my best man. And so we got to the east of Nigeria. We got wedded. And the weddings in Nigeria takes 2 days. So that's how it is. So one day we had to do something, and then another day. But the third day was when we were to return back to the city I live in, where I had a job and I had to work, where my parents worked and my brothers too. So it was on the road, traveling back from the east, back to Jos, where we live, that were involved in a very ghastly motor accident. Somehow I think my dad anticipated this. What he did was we broke up the people that were traveling into little bits. So my brother and his wife went first. They had their own private car. My dad and my mom were supposed to go later with some of my family. But my wife, we were married then. So my wife, myself, and my younger brother, who was my best man, we took public transport to make the trip back to Jos, the city we live in. And when we were very close to the city that we live in, we were involved in a ghastly motor accident where a big trailer crashed into our truck. Lots of people died on the spot. I was actually pronounced dead on the spot. My younger brother was one of the only person that actually came out of the accident without even a scratch on his body. So he was fine. But then my wife was declared dead on the spot. I was declared dead on the spot. Some other people came out of the accident, but they were fine. They did not die, at least at that point. The only reason why they knew that I was alive was I gave a cough. So my brother was already devastated. He just watched his brother literally die, and his sister, that's my wife. And then I coughed. He says, he's the one telling me this story now because I was unconscious. And then he started screaming, "My brother is still alive, my brother is still alive." And so the people there were able to dismantle the vehicle, which was already dismantled, and pulled me out of the car. I had no memory of this. I still don't have any memory of this. And then they took me to the hospital, a very neighboring hospital. This is a very rural part of Nigeria, so it wasn't even a first-class hospital to speak of. And so I got there, and then I woke up in the hospital later on in the night. And the only thing I could say to the nurses and the doctors there was, "Where's my wife? Why am I the only one here?" I was traveling with my wife and my brother. And eventually, I realized that I had some pain on my leg. That's when I realized I had broken my leg. So my leg was fractured, almost, like, it was bad. And then, so calls started going up. My elder brother, who is a surgeon, he was able to rally around the hospital where he worked in, and he got an ambulance. And they drove down to the village where I was, and were able to take me back. But at that point, I had not seen my wife or my brother, so I didn't understand what was happening. Eventually, I got to meet my brother, and he was fine. So that was a little comforting, but I had not seen my wife. My elder brother, the surgeon, he told me that my wife she's alive, but she's critical. Well, he was lying to me at that point. I can understand, they didn't just know how to break the news to me that the wife, I was married a few hours ago and she's late. And so they rushed me back to the city where we live, in the biggest hospital there. I got some preferential treatment, maybe because we're all medical professionals and we worked in that hospital. So they were able to take me into surgery real quick, get my leg fixed up. I mean, there was still some pain. But even up to 1 week I was in the hospital, I had not seen my wife. They told me she's in ICU. ICU is intensive care unit. I don't know if it stands for the same thing here. And so after some time, I kept asking, well, where's my wife? Just take me to her, And I had this strong belief that if she just hears I believed she was in the ICU. I didn't think they were lying to me, but I believed that if she heard my voice, she's going to wake up. She's going to know that her love is calling onto her. But eventually, after some point, they told me that she didn't make it. She died on the spot. So that was very traumatic for me. Eventually, afterwards, I was discharged. My brother was not admitted, but he stayed in the hospital with me because we're close. So not long after, now up to 1 week, my brother started complaining, the one that was in the accident, my best man, that he's not really breathing very well. He's feeling like there's something. So he had no physical injury on him. You could not see any scar. And then afterwards, one night I remember waking up and I could hear him in the living room, because we stayed with my parents after the accident. We needed to recover. I could hear him trying to breathe, very difficult. My parents were there worried. And then they called my elder brother, the surgeon, and he came and took my younger brother to the hospital. And that was the last time I saw him. He never came out. So eventually we learned that he had a diaphragmatic hernia, and that was stopping him from breathing, and just a medical complication. So basically in 2 weeks, I lost my world. I lost my wife, I lost my brother, and that's where my story starts from. So it really doesn't start from the accident. So the life, especially immediately after, I'll describe it as a battle. It was a real tussle. I could literally feel that the devil was trying to get a stronghold in my heart, and God was also trying to get a stronghold in my heart. Now, the passage I read when I started in Job, I wish to say that was my testimony, but that was not my testimony. That was Job's testimony. I didn't think like this. I wish I did now that I think about it in retrospect. But I remember the feeling of depression, intense anxiety, fear over the future. It was difficult. It was a very difficult time. And there was just this gaping hole in my heart that I needed to fill up with something. Before then, I could not understand the emotion called loneliness. I didn't think it was a real thing. I think people just made it up. I wonder how can I can stay and enjoy my own company for hours and I don't need anyone and I'm fine. But then I realized what deep loneliness really meant. I was so lonely. There was a hole in my heart and I could not feel it. And it pains me to say this, but unfortunately, that the desire to fill that hole in my heart led me to things that I regret till today, and it has ruined some relationships that I had. I went into an amorous relationship, just trying to fill up the void with something. I had challenges with pornography. And then on the side, I could see God trying to really get a hold of my heart. Like, I'm trying to use this to teach you something, my child. I want to show you something that you can. I want to be with you in this. So that's the great tussle that was happening to me. I remember those nights, very lonely nights, long nights. I couldn't sleep. I could hear my parents listening to me, trying to figure out what's going on with me, but I wasn't very vocal, so I wouldn't tell people my problems until after the fact. And that's where the battle really happened. That's where the testimony is. It's not in the accident. It's in what happened afterwards. The devil really tried. He tried. He's persistent. He tried to get a hold of me. But then I started the longing for peace. This is something that we spoke about in our discipleship class with Pastor. Hope, joy, peace. The need for it was so overwhelming that I just needed to feel at peace. And that drove me back I was a Christian when this happened. It drove me back to the Bible, trying to, where can I find peace? Where's my joy? Where's my peace? And then in all that, it took me to this passage in Jeremiah chapter 29, from verses 1 to 11. I heard someone preach about this, and it just stuck in my heart, and it has been part of my testimony ever since. I'm not going to read all of Jeremiah 29, 1 to 11. I'll just take some verses. Verse 1 says, in Jeremiah 29, "Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders, which were carried away captives, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon." I'll jump to verse 4. It says, "Thus said the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon." Then verse 11, which is the popular one that everyone knows. "For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, said the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." These few verses, we know the verse 11 very well. But the people that this was written to the Israelites, and the Israelites were not in Jerusalem at this point. They have been taken captive. And the verse 4 that I read, it says, "Unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away." It made me to realize that, in truth, the thoughts that God has towards me are of good and not of evil. But even if it takes me through the valley of the shadow of death, that is still true. It doesn't change. The thought that God has towards me are thoughts of good and not of evil. And I kept going through this in my head. The second phase, because of how close their deaths were, I really didn't have time to really mourn my brother. It was all about my wife. She was the closest person to me in the world. And then eventually I moved to US. I came to US in 2020. My family thought that it's a good idea for me to just leave the environment where it happened. Maybe I'll have a better frame of mind. When I came here, first of all, that was the peak of COVID. So everyone was already secluded. And then I'm coming away from my support system, my family and my friends that had helped me that time. And I came alone just here. And then the second phase of depression came. That's when I had my next battle. I started battling things that I had struggled before and gained victory over. I started battling them again because the loneliness increased again. And my mind kept coming back to this passage and other passages that I'll read to you. And, there's this sense that, my son, the thoughts I have for you are of good. They're not of evil. I have an expected end for you. Do I know what the end is? I don't know. No idea what it is, but I trust that Bible passage with all my heart. There are some other passages that, in the course of these few years, I've come to deeply realize as true. I know that this is true. One of it is in Isaiah. Well, both of them are in Isaiah. Isaiah 40, chapter 29 to 31. It says, "He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." And Isaiah 26 verse 3 says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusted thee." This passage is very true in my life, because the very second that I stop, my attention, my thought, my mind, my thinking leaves the Bible, I begin to struggle. I begin to fight battles that I'm not designed to fight. This is not my battle. Why am I fighting it? It's because I left the Word. And that's my encouragement to you. When you leave the Word, there's this saying, sin will keep you from this book, and this book will keep you from sin. Very true. This is very true in my life. Now, the story is still being written. I'm just sharing the first part of it. I still have, I don't know how long God has me to live. But there are some things that I have seen that is better because I have gone through that experience as opposed to if I had not gone through it. There's one miracle. As many of you know, I got married last year in August. I got married again last year to my beautiful wife. One miracle that I'll just call it a miracle is I have this ability to love my wife, Chiamaka, without being plagued by memories of my past. I'm not comparing with my previous wife, and I can't explain it. I can't explain how this is happening. I've had that question thrown at me so many times. Are you able to love your wife without comparing? Like, that does not even come up. My wife has not even come up one day and says, I feel like you're comparing me to your late wife. And it's something I told her earlier on before I even asked her to marry me, or just after I asked her to marry me. I told her, I have no intention of making you compete for my attention with even with the living, not to talk of the dead. So that's one miracle that's happened. The second is I have this deep need to know God and be known by Him. And I can't explain how. I'm not perfect. It's not all the time that I read sometimes I want to read my Bible. It's not all the time that I eventually do. But then it's almost instant. Almost instant. The second my eye leaves here, I know. Things in my life starts going, I start going back to that dark place that I'm not supposed to be in. And that's like an arrow. It's a marker telling me that you have left where your peace is. The second you remove your eye from the cross, your peace is going to leave. It may take you, I think it may take you longer for you to realize. For me, it's almost immediate. Maybe it's because of my past and what I've been through. But I already know that I need to get back to the Word. I need to get back to the Word. The third thing that this has helped me realize is I have this deep realization of my own mortality. This helps to keep things in perspective. I'm a young person, but then in Nigeria, the average lifespan is about 40-something years. So you're more likely to die before you're 40 than above 40. But even with that, you see how people think. When you realize that you are mortal and you're eventually going to leave this earth, how does that change your behavior? How does that change your actions? And this is not my first brush with death. I've dodged bomb blast. I've had people standing with sharp knives and very blunt intentions. They want to kill me. But this is the first time that as this happened, someone I actually know died. Someone very, very close to me died. So that deep realization of my own mortality, I just know that I'm not here forever. I have a mission. I have to know God. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to love my wife. Even things that I have to pour out my life to my wife. How will I be as a dad? I have to prepare to be a father. These are the things that I may not have had if I had not passed through this situation or the experience that I have. So that's my testimony in a very brief way. It's still ongoing. This was 2019. This is just 2023. So it's not like it happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But I can tell you one thing. And I believe that this is true. God is faithful. He's faithful in my life. He's going to be faithful in the future. I don't know what the future holds for me. And the truth is, I don't even want to know. So initially when it happened, I wanted to know, God, what are you doing? Are you sure you know what you're doing? Can you run things by me next time before you do something like this? I really wanted to know, but now I'm comforted by passages like Jeremiah 29, that even if I'm in captivity, God has got me. God has got me. And again, some of the times, even from this pulpit, I hear messages that stick with me. I may not share them openly, but it stays in my heart. There During the Revelation series, when we're looking at Revelations, I think it's 1 verse 18, Jesus described himself as, I'm the one that has, I'm paraphrasing now, the keys to death and Hades. And I just sat there thinking, he was in control. He knew what was happening. He knew what was happening. When the accident happened, a friend told me, funny, just before it happened, before the marriage, I was studying the book of Job. And when the accident happened, she told me, hey, do you remember Job? And I told her, I'm not Job. Do I look like Job? Why is God treating me like Job? But at the end of the day, I realized deeply that this testimony of Job is the biggest testament of faith, one of the biggest testaments of faith in the Bible. Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him, but I will maintain my own ways before him. And this is what I'm trying to do all my life. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know whether there's some trauma waiting for me, but though he slays me, yet will I trust in him. And this is, the parents of the little girl, I can't recall her name, Chloe, they're not here, but this is what I was thinking about them. They're going through a very difficult time right now. And the truth of this passage and the truth of Jeremiah 29 is still true in their lives as believers. And I just pray that God will help us to remember to pray for people that are going through experiences like this. That at the end of the day, that God will be with them in a very real way, and God will expose the words in his Bible. He will take them to his word, and they will be able to read, and God will be with them in their struggle. I have experienced God grieving with me. I know that God is grieving with me. He's with me. He's with me. He's with me, and he's with you. So that's my testimony. Thank you for the opportunity to share. I hope you are blessed by it.